Welcome to Deprogramming with your host, Terry Lynn, the show that explores mind control tactics used for millennia to shape our thoughts and beliefs. We dive deep with experts to understand the harsh reality of what is really going on and how to unwind the damage. Here's your host, Terry Lynn.
So welcome, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining me again today. I'm going to just give a short introduction since I gave a long introduction the first time that we did a podcast on the edited version. So you are Elizabeth Good, and this is our second interview. We did one concerning more about the grooming aspect of sex trafficking and just the more of the root causes, I guess. We talked about, well, let me first introduce you. So you are a pioneer in the anti-sex trafficking movement. You've helped thousands of survivors find freedom and a new life. You have expanded your work to help all break free from past trauma and self-defeating mindsets. We'd like to hear more about that. Based on your book, Groomed, which is what we talked about last time, and decades of experience in counseling, you launched an initiative which empowers churches and Christian organizations to break generational patterns and bulletproofs leaders and families. You're the founder and CEO of the Foundation United, which we're going to focus on today, which was created out of a passion to end sexual exploitation and protect children globally. Your foundation collaboratively provides best practices and proven models to eradicate sexual abuse and exploitation domestically and internationally. Your initiative creates scalable, systemic change in education, law enforcement, healthcare, and the church. So you really are covering a lot of aspects to the system, the education system, the criminal justice system, the healthcare system, the church, and families as well, drilling down to all of those areas in your work. And I've perused your website, and there's a lot there. And we wanted to expose your website to everyone that we can, to all of our audience, so that because we're looking for resources that are legit. And so that's another thing I wanted to talk about too. How do we know the difference? Obviously yours is. So tell us a little bit about the foundation that you'd like us to know at this point, past the introduction. And thank you for coming.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me back. Great to be back. The website is thefoundationunited.org, so someone could go there. And the way that the foundation is built is I ran sex trafficking safe homes for over a decade, and there was thousands and thousands of girls that we tried to get to receive a bed. I mean, the story behind sex trafficking, especially in America, but pretty much globally, the stats are childhood sexual abuse is at the root. So you take a child that has, typically sexual abuse starts at 3, 4, 5 years old, and it's usually at the hands of somebody that is supposed to be loving them, protecting them, and it creates this blur and confusion. And then a child there's a lot of pathways that they go off, but that's sort of the off ramp from someone's destiny and their identity. That's a very large lightning bolt to hit a child and know how to go from there, because you're not speaking about what's happening. And so most often when they do speak, no one pays attention. So for us, when somebody ran away and they would end up on the streets within 48 hours, 80% of runaways, no matter where they live, are approached by a predator who's basically a trafficker, and we'll get them hooked on a drug. Hey, baby, I love you. Your parents didn't know how to love you. We'll take care of you. They could present as a couple. So like finally a safe mom and dad that care, or a boyfriend. And the stats are just the same. Within 48 hours, 80% gone. And then they will be sold 15 to 40 times a day. And typically it lasts for at least 7 years. And then they'll end up either dead or helping to recruit younger girls, because everyone wants an 11-year-old. And the cycle of the chronic trauma and just scramble of identity, helping to rescue a person, is so much work, because they don't feel they're worthy of rescuing. Right. So you can offer a bed. They don't want a bed. I'm good. He loves me. This is my boyfriend. And so after a decade, I describe it as like holy discontent. Like I was just like, I cannot do this. We always knew there'd be a foundation, which would be an umbrella to the movement. But what the Foundation United has landed at is we got to get ahead of it. How do you reach every kid?
Yep.
Everywhere in the world. It's systemic, scalable, global solutions. How do you reach every one of those children went to school? Everybody saw a medical professional. Usually all of them were arrested. They had an encounter with law enforcement or the judicial system, or school. They sat in school. So many of the girls would say, by third, fourth grade, the teachers would be so frustrated with me. Why can't you learn? Many of them said they were called stupid. They were so full of trauma of what was going to happen again at home that they're not present. And so we were just like, this is impossible to ignore. Every system has to be educated. And so our greatest desire is to awaken the eyes of each system. And we've done tremendous work in all of those. And then the newest is the church, because a really high number of the girls, their abuse happened either by their family member that then would have them act perfect in church every Sunday and no one really looked at what was happening under the hood, or it was a youth group pastor, a pastor, piano teacher that was a church, and the parents just dragging them back. You need more Bible study. You need more. And it's like, gosh, if the numbers in the church didn't match the world and we really were, as a believer, walking with the power of God and the Holy Spirit, Jesus, it would be a whole different ballgame. But there is so many secrets, so much abuse. The statistics are staggering. So our goal is to get ahead of it, pop the lid on every system, and off ramp a child before their life is just ruined.
My gosh, it's so true. Like, it's everywhere. It's such a huge problem that you have to educate the system that in every country. And so, you're global, right? Are you mostly
like 17 countries, I think, at least right now. Mm-hmm.
Okay. See, you began in 2010 and,
well, I launched a local organization in 2010, but when we launched the local one, we said at some point there will be a foundation that will be an umbrella to the movement. So we incorporated the Foundation United in 2017. And since then, it's just been attracting like the global leaders that are the 1%ers that can actually move the needle, that have done it and are still doing it. So like over healthcare, we have Deb O'Hara-Rakowski, who is brilliant. She's on the UN Advisory Council to Malta and just has amazing influence. She's presented. So we've trained over 750,000 emergency room doctors around the world, not around the country, around the world, because 80% of ER doctors will stitch up a child and give them right back to their predator, like literally not knowing what they're looking at, because it's textbook, but until you have the antidote, you don't even know what you're looking at, because these predators look very different. And so that's a super passion, but it's led by that super leader. We have another one that's leading the global strategic task force, the global task force, parliamentary task force. She's all over the world helping awaken the countries. Like back in 2010-11, we had an awakening in America that sort of all around the country, everyone's like, this is happening in our backyard. Sex trafficking's here. A lot of these other countries still don't really understand that this is coercion and what's really underneath it all, and the exploitation, the root of gender inequality. It's all tied together. So she goes out, she opens those doors. They say, what do we do? She introduces the other leaders. We come in and systemically look at everything. So it's a very, very, very smart way of trying to get ahead of the issue, because you know what? The stats tell us that I think there's 48 million people in slavery right now, more than any other time in history. And 24 million, half of those are women and children. And of those, only 1% will ever be found. So the idea that we're going to give them a bed and we're going to heal the situation is ridiculous. It's growing exponentially because it's such a moneymaker. Yep. We have to get in here and get smarter and put the antidote in place to off-ramp the systems.
Yeah. And it's not just about educating parents, because sometimes parents are the perpetrators, or a lot of times.
Right? Yeah, exactly. It's such a big piece of it. It's all important, because parents now, even if your parents are awesome, an FBI agent says the most dangerous place for your child to be right now is in their bedroom with one of these. Yeah. Because there's 500,000 predators at any time coming after your child. Like, it's just a whole different game. It's not the era of stranger danger. And don't go to that car that's pulled over. It's, hey, guess what? That's really not a 14-year-old boy. That's somebody really trying to just lure you in one little bit of shame at a time. You know, lean a little closer, take your strap down a little bit. And before you know it, like a 9-year-old is in there and hooked, or pornography pops up and it's changing their pathways. So they're pursuing and they're down a rabbit hole. It is a world gone a little mad, and it's time for new antidotes and pathways. And that's what we're pretty passionate about, is trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, there's enough people that don't want this to continue compared to the ones that do. And it's just, anyone that we've talked to, they don't know what to do. They're like, I don't know, where do I give my money? What do I do? And so I think that's where a lot of people, the masses, are at. Right. And perhaps too, they don't understand how they're enabling it in certain ways. Like, for instance, right. Giving your 10-year-old a phone is kind of enabling that, putting them in danger.
Without
and I'm sure there's a myriad of other. Yeah. So,
I one of the big things, especially with the decade, 11, 12 years that I ran the safe housing and learning the other organizations around the country, and the people talking about the issue without actually providing outcomes or doing anything, or able to show you audited financials. I mean, that's step number one. And so that's what, if you look at on our website, the letter from the CEO, it says we are trying to take the guesswork out of it for people that want to support, because we are putting together some of the highest proven partners on a national and global scale with, unsurpassable reputations that actually have outcomes. So everything for people, I would say, look for annual reports, look for outcomes and measurements, look for audited financials, look for, people that are endorsing them and understanding what they're doing. Because I've never seen such a dark industry. And I don't think that the people that even get into the helping side realize what's going to happen once they get in there, and the money they could raise, and how hard it is to actually execute. I think there's just a lot that people, unintentionally find themselves in the wrong places.
So if someone was to go to your website, and there was some rabbit holes there too, for sure, you could definitely get a lot of information from that. So but let's just tell us a little bit what are the choices that people could choose from that want to get involved, besides so if they wanted to give financially, how and where would they do that? And also, what are some of the ways they could get involved to help, so that they're on the end of not just saying, oh, I wish somebody would do something about that, or wow, I don't know,
they can do something. Right. Absolutely. So first, I would describe a few things to make it simple for people on the website. If you go to the very top where it says more, at the very top on the right, if you drop down the more button, there's a tab that says resources. And if you're a parent, there is just so much free downloadable information. There are books you could buy. There are videos you could play. I mean, 3 years old is when you should start talking to your children, just to normalize the conversation, because as scared as we are as parents, the world's normalizing the conversation and they're doing it all wrong. Like, if you're not doing it, there's a kid on the bus.
There you go.
Doing it, and your kid's getting it. I mean,
you better get comfortable with it.
Yeah, many people are like, well, we keep our kid in a bubble. You know what happens to those that I've watched is, I've had 2 different really high profile, there's so many of them, but whether it's an Indian chief on a reservation that the girl thinks it's a boyfriend, she'll find her own transportation to meet the guy. But educating your children about the red flags is so basic and not scary, but it's guarding them. It's like giving them the armor they need to go to daily war. And so other ways to help, most importantly, would be equipping your family, being the guard of your family in your circle of influence. So those resources are there and they're downloadable, easy peasy. But next would be, are you involved in a school? Are you involved in a church? Do you know anybody in law enforcement in your town that, hey, we have this free. The beautiful thing is we get private donations and grants. So the law enforcement agencies are so underfunded. They're so overwhelmed. We could come in with free training and just support them in their communities. So it lowers crime. It lowers everything. It's a major, major influence. So law enforcement, heads of schools, superintendents, involved in, any legislators that are passionate about it, make the connection. Somebody connected me to a legislator in Pennsylvania, and now we're helping them on every front in the entire state of Pennsylvania. So the way that we're created is we could go top down and it just blankets, versus I'm going to go in and train my doctor. It's hospital system. So if you're connected to any hospital administrators, it's a great introduction for our team to come in there and we call it, let us bulletproof your organization. And then the other ones are the training for insurance agencies. So if you run insurance agencies and you want to, because if you're insuring a business and they don't know what they're allowing in, a lot of things are coming back and people are getting sued, and it's coming back to even the insurance is culpable.
Wow.
So there's so many, like you said, rabbit holes, but we are just trainers that could protect. So any system that you're part of, we'd love an introduction. And if you're connected to your pastor, say, we should put this in place, because there are headlines constantly. And every time you watch anything on a sex trafficking sting, there is a pastor arrested, there's a teacher arrested, there's a youth group worker arrested. So we don't come in to scare people, but rather, hey, we care about your business. I'm sure you do as well. Let us give you the tools to put some armor around it so that you're not the next one in the headlines. And that's really the passion, is guarding the businesses so that they can't say, well, I didn't know. I didn't catch that child, that's no longer acceptable. I think too much is out of the box to say, oh, I just didn't know. Yep. Now let's just get equipped so you have eyes to see and ears to hear, and you could step in there and advocate.
So you really are the professionals that someone can rely on to get the information. And also, let's say they want training in some organization, that you can provide that. Let's say that they just want to educate themselves so that they know how to better equip their family. You can probably provide that somehow too. And sometimes that's enough for people. Yep. Sometimes that's enough for people, and that's very effective. But now the person who's older, their kids are gone or whatever, and they have money, let's say, this is also a way that you can be supported, because you are a established foundation that has the paperwork to back up what you're doing and where your assets are going, that kind of thing. So this is kind of what we're looking for. We're looking for trusted foundations and just organizations that are doing the work, because so many are not, so they're not trustworthy.
Sadly, you're right.
Yeah.
But I would say, even if somebody's like, well, I think I could be a supporter in a significant way, you can email info@thefoundationunited.org. I will be able to access that. On our donor page, you can see that, even with, on the website, it says, give now or donate. I don't know what it says, one of those two.
Okay.
But we have our transparency, platinum transparency from, now it's called Candid. I think it used to be GuideStar. There's ratings, and there's things that rate and vet organizations. And so all of that, there's more information on our donor page. And then there's also there's a tab that says financials, and all of our old audited financials and annual reports are there as well. So and I think the biggest way that people can make an impact is a monthly supporter, because sometimes, you might be really excited about something, then you forget about it. But if you sign up to do an amount, whatever amount is reasonable for you, I don't care if it's $20 a month.
Yeah.
Then what I love about that is not only do we keep getting support ongoing, but when you see your credit card statement, you're like, oh yeah, and reminds you to care. Then sometimes you make a gift and then you're on your way and you never think about that organization again. We're facing the darkest of the dark. There's deception everywhere.
There is.
The tactics are, it's like watching an epic. I always say, like, it's the funnest time we've been in yet, because evil's out. I've never seen evil out so much. Like, there's always been murmurings of the UN and DC trying to legalize child prostitution. You've heard always talk. Now it's all headlines. All of the things that were sort of in the dark, there's a loud voice, and all of us that are like, we just want to do good, we're a little quieter. So we need to be getting the headlines and getting out there, because we are the majority.
We are the majority.
But we're too quiet.
That's right. Yeah.
My new book that's coming out in the fall is called Speak the Unspeakable. So that'll be an encouragement for people to, we got to be louder. Let's hear it. Like, let's not hold anything back. We got to go after it.
People don't want
something. You're probably right. Something's happening.
Probably right. I think people don't want to make someone else uncomfortable in talking about these things. I know. And it's what I think about is, well, that child is uncomfortable, or that, situation's pretty uncomfortable. And, speaking about it, awareness and knowledge is power. And that's where we have to just get more comfortable with talking about it. Even in your book, I think it was Groomed. Well, that's the only one I read so far, so it had to be that. But you talked about how parents, I had it on my notes here. Let me just read some of my notes. How sexual abuse is generational, And the courage to speak of it to your kids carries great power to end it. And so let's say one of the parents was exploited when they were younger. A lot of parents don't want to talk about that with their kids.
No.
But why not?
Because statistically, I don't care if you're of faith or not of faith. I have my master's in clinical psych. We talk about generational patterns. Things will repeat until something is done to change the cycle. If you're of the faith community, they talk about it in the Bible, sins of the father to the third or fourth generation. We have the power to interrupt and change the outcome of your future generations. Like, it's so interesting to me whenever a parent will call distress, my child was abused. First thing I'll say is, were you abused as a child? And they'll just get silent. And I'm like, and they're like, yes. I'm like, did you ever tell your story?
Yeah.
When there is shame, you are raising people in your own image. And so if you don't have a voice, guess what? And you don't have eyes to see what you're exposing them to because nobody interrupted yours. So it's the time to just really, I like this, the age of disruption. It's time for us to just get ahead of all of it. And there's no shame because it's 1 out of 3 women. And people say that's the underreported number. So
I think so.
1 out of 3 of us, there's no shame because it's you too, me too. Okay.
Yeah.
And if it's 1 out of 5 boys, I mean, we just got to talk. Because we could protect the whole next generation. Because a child that is not protected and gets abused, you know what happens to them? They get confused. And now we have everybody waiting on the sidelines when someone's confused to help them with the wrong agenda, try to figure out their pathways. And we just have to get louder. The ones that have, you know, our eyes aligned with truth. Just have to start speaking out.
Yeah. You can stop the cycle. And stopping the cycle is you have to take action. My family was the same way. We had a cycle of generational incest. And for my sisters and I, we had some of that in our life too, but we were brought to counseling for another reason in our family. And so we got comfortable with counseling, like comfortable with getting help. And so as time went on and memories started to come back, we started to realize, oh my gosh, you know, we all had our children and we stopped the cycle for the most part, at least for the incest part. So it had to be talked about. It had to be healed. And it takes years.
Beautiful. Like, you saying that is the most empowering thing you could share, because it helps other people be like, but wasn't that, you're like, no, it was easy, not easy, but I mean, yeah, once you say it, you realize, oh, everybody's still okay.
Everybody's still okay. And yeah, it's such a healing experience. And you know, when I talk to other women that have had the same or similar experiences but haven't really dealt with it, they don't realize how it's impacted their life, how much it's impacted their life. And they're just, oh yeah, no, that was just, no. And that energy, like you said, moves on. Maybe not in that exact way, but that kind of dysfunction, it's in your aura, your energy, your frequency, something, your DNA. I don't really know.
I was going to say your DNA. You're going to pass it on. Bottom line,
you're going to pass something dysfunctional on, and so the next generation should be better than you. And I tell my son, you are doing better than I did because of these things, and your kids they're doing better than you did because you're doing better. Right. And so you want to just keep that kind of cycle going. And that takes intervention. It takes getting help. It takes humility to get help. It takes courage. It takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
As you know.
So powerful. So I love that you're bringing this up. Yeah.
Oh, I got goosebumps. Thank you so much for the work that you have done and are still doing. We fully support you. I'm going to, in this episode, after you leave us, I'm going to go through your website and just show some of the pages there so the audience can see some of the links that you've talked about and give them a visual of that. So, but I know you're a busy woman, and so you have a lot on your plate all the time, and I'm sure today. So.
So grateful because taking time to talk like this is important. It can change everything in the life of a family. Absolutely everything.
Yep. Bless your efforts. Really appreciate you, Elizabeth. So glad I found you. All right. You have a good day. Bye for now.
Okay. I'll see you again. Take care.
Okay, perfect. Bye-bye. So here's the foundation's website. As she said, it's thefoundationunited.com. And we just scroll down a little bit. Getting to the roots, as she talked about. impacting the most vulnerable around the world. So they are a global foundation. And we talk about some of the, key elements in order to getting ahead of this, as she talked about. And I'm so glad that she brought that out so clearly, because this problem is very multi-layered. So I meant to talk to her about the pillars here: prevent, educate, support, and learn. Now let's go under, I think she said the more tab. Here's her financials. I have looked at this actually. And you can see the audits of what they do, right? That's important. Let's see. Stats and resources are there under that tab to get involved. Okay. Prevention. Remember, there's more of us than there are of them. There just is. There's more of us than them. And then I don't like the us and them delineations, but in regards to communicating clearly, the them is those that are perpetrating this. So under protection, we have the different trainings she spoke of. Under prevention, we have all kinds of information that we talked about mostly in the groomed episode, the Cool Ant series. I like that. And this is from her, no doubt. There she is. And that's her long bio and what she's doing. And their focus, the prevention pillar. That's what I wanted to talk to her about. Prevention pillar, protection pillar, policy pillar. I failed to mention that to her. I wanted to ask her some questions. So when I talk about them or the perpetrators, I think there's an evil aspect to the bigger picture, for sure. I don't think anyone doubts that. However, the people that are involved also have been abused for the most part. And so those people are possibly fragmented. They're hurt. We should look at the people that are perpetrating these crimes as a multifaceted problem. They themselves need help. Maybe some are beyond help. Maybe some aren't. More times than not, the greater percentage have been abused themselves, have been in some kind of dysfunction themselves, being raised in that dysfunction. And so that twists minds, that causes damage, causes trauma. And trauma can be released, trauma can be healed. And so while we want to stop the sexual exploitation, trafficking, all of the crime around this, all of the horrible injustices and evil, the acts themselves are evil. But there's a lot about this that we don't understand with why people perpetrate these types of crimes. So at this point, the emergency action is to educate and stop, to a great degree, what's happening. And in the meantime, help people to heal, not only the victims, and so they don't become perpetrators themselves, but also the perpetrators, because not all of them are unable to be helped. The society that we're living in now is so deranged that it's going to take a lot of resources and time and effort on everyone's part. Everyone. We all offer something to this frequency, this energy. And are we offering that energy of apathy? Are we offering the energy of, I am going to oppose what I know is wrong and hurtful? Or are we going to enable the perpetrators in one way or another? By ignoring the problem or part of the problem, You can't be walking around in this society now and not understand and realize to some degree that there's a problem. And I think some of the disconnect is that people don't understand the power that they hold. And that's part of the agenda, I believe. Oftentimes I hear people say, well, what can I do? What am I going to do? You know, I can't control that. I can't just, it's too big. But what needs to be understood is that the power of one person, if you understand the true power that you have, is huge. And if we all think that way, well, what can I do? Now we're in this situation. Look at what Elizabeth has done, with the help of many, no doubt. But she's realizing her power that she has, and she's doing something. And now a whole foundation has emerged that is very successful, doing all of these trainings, helping. We have to chip away at this. And more than just chip away at this point, we need everyone that is pure in heart and does not want this to continue, which is the majority, to do something. Something. If that's just making your own family, making sure that your own family is healthy emotionally and is protected too, because that will cause damage. If trauma happens outside the home, in a school, or because of like she mentioned, a pastor or a coach, any person that has access to your children, since that's where it starts, then if you protect from that, you have now a family unit that is strong and is healthy emotionally. And so that family, those people, those children that grew up in that family now are raised with relatively low amount of trauma. We all have some trauma from growing up, because nobody has a perfect family. And so it's unavoidable. But to raise a healthy child and then have a healthy adult, so much more functionality in that adult than one that has to take years of their life, their young adult life, and heal the trauma. That takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time. I've had to do that. And so finally getting to the point where you are in a state now where you're able to give. You're in a state now where you understand, where you've undid a lot of damage. It's so, this situation is so much better to be in. And so so my point is if that's all you can do, energy wise, is to keep your family safe and healthy, that's enough. That's what we need all the families to do. But if you're somebody that doesn't have a family, or your family is raised, and you look around and you're just like, what can I do? There's things you can do. Whether it's getting involved in your own neighborhood, getting to know the children in your own neighborhood. Back in the day, how it used to be, where we knew who our neighbors were and the kids played outside. That's my generation. We played outside in the neighborhood, and it was relatively safe. There was things that happened for sure. But it was relatively safe, and everybody knew everybody. So now that we have the internet and there's danger everywhere, it's a totally different situation. And that's what Elizabeth spoke about too. And so the practices that families have to put in place are different, for sure. But get involved and at least be aware when you're walking around in society. Be aware of your surroundings. This is happening everywhere. I guarantee there's at least one child, probably more, in your immediate neighborhood that is being abused on a regular basis. Who are they? Who are they? So thank you for watching this episode of Deprogramming. This is Terry Lynn.
You've been listening to Deprogramming with host Terry Lynn. To connect to Terry or to check out our other shows, head to lifesource.global. And don't forget, hit the like, subscribe and share buttons. This show has been brought to you by Source Light Productions.